You're listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast, a podcast for Steelers fans by Steelers fans. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook.
And welcome back to the Renegade Blitz podcast. It's our final season recap episode. I'm joined by Chris Ward, Guthrie, Rasmussen, and Max Rosenfeld. I'm Ty Polk, your host. And guys, we've finally made it through COVID, through constant moving around of shows because everything just went haywire. It's not a victory Monday, but for us at least, in our first season of doing a podcast, it's a victory Monday for us. So guys, how are you feeling? It's finally over, the regular season, and we're on to, well, for some people, the real season, the playoffs.
Yeah, it's been a crazy season, just unprecedented with the pandemic and everything. And it's amazing the NFL got all games off without canceling any. Credit to them and credit to all the players. Dealing with unnormalcy and having to sacrifice a lot to get these games off. So I'm excited for the playoffs, and Steelers haven't been in 2 years or since 2017 when they had that loss to Jacksonville. So just looking forward to Sunday night.
Like at the beginning of the season, kind of when we all started all this, we were talking like, is this even going to happen? Like the season, like what are we going to do to fill up, the space, our website, if there's no season? That's what we were worried about. So just to have this season go on, we're very happy that it's gotten this far. Obviously, very excited for a champion to be crowned this season. We're hoping it's going to be the Steelers, and it's just been a kind of a wild ride that we've all been a part of.
Yeah, like you guys just said, so happy this season happened. It definitely looked at points like it might get paused or delayed, and the fact that we're having the playoffs on time, looks like we're about to play the Super Bowl on time in early February. It's really exciting. It really just flew by, though. I'm glad we had it, but it really just flew by. I'm sad that the regular season's over, but also really glad that the Steelers are back in the playoffs for the first time in a couple of years. So a lot of nervous energy heading into Sunday. So I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that.
Yeah, we started everything with the website in September, the first episode of the podcast, September, and now look at us. We're in January 2021, and we're still rolling. And it's all thanks to you guys for tuning in, and we still got more content on the way, plenty of episodes, even if the ride ends this Sunday, which we hope it doesn't because we'd love to continue covering this season. But if so, don't worry, guys. We have plenty of content on the way, but let's talk about Steelers versus Browns, the regular season finale, and quite the game to watch, even with no stakes, really, for the Steelers, at least, until this week. The Cleveland Browns ended their 18-year playoff drought. Congratulations to them. But the Pittsburgh Steelers will be playing them on Wild Card Weekend with their complete roster. And the last time the Browns were in the playoffs, they faced the Steelers in the wild card game. And the last time before that was with the old Cleveland Browns, which, of course, became the Baltimore Ravens in 1995. The Steelers faced them then. And, of course, both times, Steelers victories, and we're expecting nothing less from that. So now let's get to the game. And, guys, I want to get your thoughts on Mason Rudolph in this game against the Browns. Did we see any growth from Mason Rudolph? The guy had 315 yards on the day and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception. Coach Tomlin called his play in the game gritty. Josh Dobbs also added 20 yards on the ground in read option situations.
No problem. I think this quickly, I think he showed a lot of growth. Personally, I still think he kind of, he had that deer in the headlights look a couple times, a little bit. But overall, if you close your eyes and if you just saw like the stats without the quarterback, you could say that was a Ben Roethlisberger-like game or an NFL quarterback-like game. So, I thought it was quite impressive. I think we've seen a little bit of growth, but then again, it's the small sample size.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought that he played pretty well in spots. There was definitely some instances where it took him too long to process things. took him too long to see the field and understand what he was looking at. But at the same time, he also made a couple of really good throws deep down the field. And I thought that those stats were a little bit inflated because he hit on a few deep shots. But for the most part, he did what he had to do. Other than that one bad pick, didn't really put the ball in harm's way. So I thought that it was a pretty successful outing for him. And obviously a lot of Steelers fans think so, arguing that maybe he should be even the quarterback of the future after this game. I wouldn't go that far, but still really impressed with him just in this spot start.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good performance by Rudolph. He's great, great deep balls. Did a really good job throwing the ball downfield. His pocket mobility is still questionable, and reading down the field is still an issue. But I thought it was a good performance for Rudolph.
Yeah, another thing too that I noticed was I feel like he has a bad rap a lot of the time for just kind of making his decision before the snap and just kind of one-looking guys before the throw. And there were a couple instances of that that I noticed when I was watching the tape. But at the same time, there were also a couple of plays where he did a really good job of holding linebackers, moving safeties with his eyes, and going to his second and third reads across the field. So I thought that was really impressive, even though there were a couple of instances where clearly he predetermined where he was going to throw the ball. Mason definitely took some steps forward as far as that goes.
Yeah, he looked a lot more comfortable too. I noticed. Kind of last year, he looked like he wasn't as calm there.
It was kind of cool also seeing him on the sidelines. It seems like he was, commanding the huddle quite well, and on the sidelines you could see that, he was talking to the guys. And I know he's probably doing that last year, but it's just kind of high. It seemed like it was more highlighted this year. I thought he did a decent job. Like you said, I wouldn't go that far where we should say he's the quarterback of the future. But if he continues to grow, why not take another look at him in the future if Ben retires? Obviously, just give him an audition, kind of. But I think we saw some growth. The Myles Garrett kind of handshake, glad we kind of closed the page in that saga at the end of the game. So that was some growth from both of them, really. It was just kind of nice that hopefully that puts an end to that crap. But yeah, it was just, I think he did well.
Chase Claypool's face in that picture just said 1,000 words in one glance. Getting back to Rudolph, and of course this was a question that was posted on our Twitter page, the Renegade Blitz. We all know that Ben is likely returning for at least one more season to get a shot at hopefully Lombardies. But with the quarterback situation and likely where the Steelers are going to be drafting, if they do get that Lombardi or have a fairly deep playoff run, they're most likely not going to get these high-end quarterback prospects. If they're shooting for one in the first round, it might be more in the lane of a Lance, a Trask, a Wilson, and now that I'm seeing it on the Twitter page, I'm not 100% sure. I have to go look it up. A Sam Ehlinger. Are we convinced that Mason Rudolph can stick around for another year as at least a backup? Does he at least delay the future Steelers quarterback in this draft talk if Roethlisberger's around for a year? Or even if Roethlisberger decides to leave? Is he the quarterback for a year?
I could see that happen, just the way the Steelers usually operate. They'll just put the next man up and have Rudolph in there. But I don't still think he's the long-term answer. But I agree with Tom when saying that he did have a gritty performance because he bounced back from that bad interception and threw two touchdown passes to make it a game. Really, I kind of thought it was over after that. He did get them within reach of winning that game. Just kind of missed on that 2-point conversion attempt. But I think he could be a stopgap type of quarterback for a year or two before they find their next franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's at least earned the right to be back on the team next year as the backup. I completely agree. And what that would mean for the future, he probably does line up as a stopgap quarterback where maybe Ben retires and you roll out Mason for a year and see what he has and then draft the quarterback after that if it doesn't go too well. But with where the team is going to be drafting this season, I really don't see a way where a quarterback is taken. Definitely not in the first round. Maybe in like the second or third round, it's someone like a Mac Jones or a Kyle Trask if the Steelers really fall in love with someone like that. But I'm with Chris on this one. He's earned the right to be back next year, especially after that performance as a backup. He's definitely, at the very least, the capable backup.
Yeah, and I kind of want to see the Steelers, although it'd be nice to get that quarterback of the future. We don't know if Ben's going to be gone after this year. It'd be nice to get like a playmaker in the first round. Obviously, I'm very excited to go more into the draft stuff, but just a little preview. It's like guys like, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, just, getting like a playmaker would be huge, or offensive lineman, even if there's like, you fall in love with somebody in the first round. It wouldn't hurt to have extra help like that. Even if you have Mason Rudolph, that would significantly help him out as a quarterback, having like those type of playmakers.
I think it works out for him because, again, there's 18 unrestricted free agents on the Steelers roster. Rudolph, with this game, has earned an opportunity at seeing if he can survive another year as the backup. And, guys, I want to also talk about this. We mentioned it earlier. Josh Dobbs had a little bit of run as a read option quarterback, giving another look that, at least for the Steelers, hasn't really been seen since Cordell Stewart. And now there's been talks about Josh Dobbs being used as a potential gimmick quarterback for the Steelers in the next playoff game against the Browns. Now, obviously, the question is, who would that take out of the inactives for the Steelers? And I guess it'd be one of the two combatants on the sideline during the game for the Steelers. Am I correct, Chris?
Yeah, I read that too. Jerry Dulac tweeted that. I guess that would be probably what they would do. One of those guys would have to sit. Isaiah Buggs and Carlos Davis. That what do you say? We have a couple Gamecocks.
I love that.
It was an awkward scene there. Tomlin, he was looking at me, he's like, "Oh God, seriously? What are we doing here?"
About Dobbs, I think Tomlin said the right thing about saying that, hey, we could potentially see him. I think that's a really good thing to say, just to make sure that, give Cleveland something else to think about. Whether or not we'll see it in the game, I don't know. It's just hard for me to see them taking Ben off the field. Me and Chris were talking about it earlier. Just, will they want to take Ben out of the field? Will they want to take the ball out of his hands? I'm just not sure in a playoff game. I'm really not. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I just don't know if it'll happen or how it'll happen.
Yeah, I just don't know if Ben would be willing to give up a couple crucial snaps. Maybe say that they do a run on third down and Dobbs gets stopped and it's a couple yards lost on the play. Steeler fans will be on Twitter just creating havoc, saying why are you doing this? This is the playoffs. Roethlisberger should have the ball in his hands. I think it was a good idea. Like the game on Sunday against the Browns was pretty much a meaningless game, so they could try these new little wrinkles, and I thought it was a good one. It could help their run game, and I hope they do actually do it on Sunday in those type of situations because it gives the defense another thing to think about. But I don't know if I can't really see Roethlisberger giving up some snaps.
Max, what did you see? Have you taken a look at any of the All-22?
Yeah.
What did you see in those read option plays that were so successful against the Browns?
Yeah, well, they definitely had to account for Dobbs, so that's one thing. It's just another wrinkle, like you guys are saying. I guess I kind of like it in a spot like this where you're trying to supplement the offense where your main quarterback is Mason Rudolph and you're trying to get cute with a little something. But I just don't think it's going to work in a spot with Ben. As soon as Dobbs comes onto the field, especially once you see it for the second straight week, you kind of know what's about to happen. This week, they could kind of pull a couple punches. They did a great job showing on the broadcast how good Dobbs is at running those options, and he was really successful at it. But at the same time, I just don't see the point in taking Ben off the field this upcoming week in a playoff spot, even for one down if you don't have to.
Yeah, it was a nice wrinkle. Good for Dobbs to see that. I mean, I love the read option. I don't see why not. It should be used by more teams, but at least something similar, like maybe more RPOs to at least get the Browns defensive coordinator and other defensive staffs in the playoffs thinking about, potentially they may be keying a little bit with run-pass options, though. And now let's talk about the rushing attack for the Steelers. James Conner led the team in rushing, 9 carries for 37 yards. But, of course, the rushing attack was buoyed by Dobbs with those 20 yards on read options. And when you eliminate Dobbs' total plus Rudolph's 1 yard rushing that was credited by the ESPN stat keepers and I guess the NFL by large, the running backs had 64 yards, which is better, I guess, in the past couple weeks. Rushing attack is going to be a concern for the Steelers in this playoffs. But do you believe there's enough good runs and situations that the Steelers could at least get by?
You know, it's crazy because they ran for, you just said 64 yards at the running backs, and it felt like 150 because of how much they've been struggling to run the ball recently. So I just think that was kind of funny because in my mind, they had way more success running the ball. But yeah, I do think it is up to Ben to throw his way through the playoffs, and I think that he can do it. I think the most important thing to me for the playoffs is that he's able to take the top off the defense when those opportunities present themselves. That was a big part also of why I thought the run was so successful this past week was because Mason was able to loosen up the defense by at least taking those shots. He consistently showed when he had one-on-one situations to the outside that he was going to let Claypool and Deontay Johnson go try to make those plays. So I thought that really softened up the D and let them run a little bit too. So it's going to be about situational running and executing those short passes and Ben being able to hit occasionally over the top. And I think that will allow him to be able to throw his way through the playoffs, like we said.
Yeah, I still think Ben will throw us to the playoffs for sure. I think James Conner might hopefully turn it up like another notch coming up to our next game. He had 9 carries for, like you said, 37 yards. He's been on and off injured wise this entire year. He was just on the COVID list a couple weeks ago. He had a quad injury. So I'm hoping, after this game, giving him some snaps, he'll come back in and kind of hopefully get close to 100 or at least over 50 yards total. I just want to see a jump from Connor a little bit, just a little, lessen, just have a kind of a balanced attack level to hopefully help Ben out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with Max. It kind of did seem like a lot more than what they actually rushed for. I thought Connor ran really hard. He's the best back, obviously, complete back, catching the ball out of the backfield, pass protection, and he has a little bit more explosiveness than what Benny Snell Jr. brings. McFarland, I know it's his rookie year, but I kind of did expect a little bit more from him this year. But if they're going to get the run game going at all, it's probably going to come from Connor. But it's probably just, I think Charles Davis mentioned it during the game that the Steelers are what they are. It's week 17. They're not a run team. They're going to be relying on the short passes, and then lately the last 2 games they've been throwing the ball down the field, which is good to see because I think Rudolph and Roethlisberger are both quarterbacks that can throw the ball down the field, and they have to use that to their strength. And I hope this week against the Browns, Roethlisberger lets it loose.
I thought that Connor was running with a little extra juice yesterday too. I don't know if that's just because he hasn't been on the field as much recently, but it definitely seems like he just had more energy running through people and bouncing off tackles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that goes to the playoffs a little bit. That's kind of what I was saying. Just he did look like, I agree. It kind of looks like the Connor we saw last year and the year before a little bit. Just the bright glimpses. I just kind of hope we see more of that kind of going forward.
If there's one thing that I'm hoping to see out of the Steelers rushing attack, which is kind of what Chris Carter mentioned during the half-season recap for the Steelers on Thanksgiving, which is the game against the Chargers in the playoffs on the way to the 6th Super Bowl. Is there a possibility that we could see something like that out of the Steelers in the playoffs, starting with this wild card game?
I'm not anticipating anything like that, honestly. I really think that how far the Steelers go this postseason is pretty much going to be dictated by number 7 and how he performs.
Yeah, we're definitely going to look for Ben to have kind of an angry Ben just based off the last couple of years. He was injured all last year. The exit to Jacksonville, I'm sure, is going to be lingering kind of in the back of his mind. I'm sure we'll see some questions from reporters about those kind of past seasons and kind of what it means to be back and what's going through his head. I think it's all going to be up to get to number 7. We're going to need to use number 7, and he's going to need to be playing his best football. And I think this season he has overall. He's looked really good. The deep ball, we need to continue to see growth from that.
Yeah, it's going to be all on Ben. The Steelers, the run game is, I don't know if it's the offensive line, probably plays more of a factor than the running backs, but probably a little bit of both. They've tried different type of schemes and really nothing has worked. But they're going to need Roethlisberger to play really well, obviously, in the postseason. And I think he could have a big game against the Browns. The Browns defense is really nothing really special, really. And they lost Vernon for the season. He had an Achilles injury, and he was a pretty good passer. He had 9 sacks on the season. He had sack yesterday against the Steelers. Myles Garrett's obviously a problem to deal with, but they had a lot of key secondary guys out, and Denzel Ward probably not going to play in this game. So I could see Ben taking some shots and getting some pretty big plays made.
One thing that the willingness to go deep from Rudolph, it really helped out the receivers in this game, and Chase Claypool was the beneficiary of that with 5 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. Deontay Johnson also benefited with 3 catches for 96 yards, and Juju Smith-Schuster had 6 catches for 65 yards and a touchdown. What's your thoughts on this? Claypool, he's 6'4", 230-something. It's clear if they get into the red zone, just throw the ball up into his direction and see, and let him use that catch radius, because that's when the Steelers started showing the most success under Mason Rudolph. Agreed?
Agreed. I think Steelers fans all through Twitter were kind of talking this last couple of weeks is, they've wanted to see more out of Claypool. And I think we saw a lot of them this game. And it'll just be interesting to see how he goes in the playoffs and kind of how defenses try to combat him and players like Juju, Deontay. Because I think we got 3, really good receivers, for that teams could really take, and that honestly be their number 1 receiver. These guys are really good kind of guys. So it'll just be interesting to see, how this all translates into the playoffs, when there's a lot more at stake.
Claypool was a beast, and I definitely think that part of that, like you mentioned, is that the Browns were playing with some backup corners and they weren't at full strength in their secondary. So I think that when you take his physical skills up against guys who aren't necessarily ones, that definitely can show itself, and it did. He made some big plays in the game, and I think that he's also, when I look at the tape, I think that he's open a lot more than he gets the ball in recent weeks. So I haven't been as hard on him as a lot of Steelers fans have been on Twitter, like Guthrie mentioned. But yeah, big game from him, and I think that he's got to be featured a lot more in the playoffs, especially against the Browns, again, who are still going to probably not have their entire secondary.
Yeah, he should be able to have a big game against the Browns. He kind of struggled there. What was the game? Buffalo. He struggled there. He got pressed at the line of scrimmage. Buffalo has a veteran secondary, and Trey Davis is, obviously one of the best corners in the league. But against Cleveland, Jake Burns mentioned on the podcast that they have just a bunch of guys on their defense. It's really, they don't really scare you too much. Myles Garrett, obviously a great pass rusher, but they struggle at linebacker in the safety position, especially, and then their cornerbacks have been depleted. Without Denzel Ward, that's huge for them.
It also felt like he kind of talking about Claypool, like he kind of fell in love with trying to draw that pass interference for a stretch there. So it was nice to really see him fight through contact on that touchdown yesterday and secure the ball. That was really nice to see, because I really did get the vibe that a lot of the times in recent weeks he'd been looking for that PI.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I remember that. It just seems like that's just what he was banking on, and it seemed, I think there was a couple. I can't remember if it was last, not this game, but 2 games ago or the game before that. That just seems like that's all we were getting out of him is this. He was trying to draw the flag, and he was just kind of putting his hands up, and it's just like, oh man, I just want to see you, fight the contact, and like you said, Ty, and get that touchdown, and just getting those big catches. And I think we saw that, and I kind of think that hopefully that turns the corner on that. Just kind of always trying to go for the flag, because a lot of Steelers fans know that they weren't really calling anything this game. It felt like, and so you can't always bank on that. So you like when the refs sometimes let them play, but there's a line, and you just have to be ready, because sometimes they won't call anything, and you just have to be a tougher player then and make that play.
Yeah, you hope to see something more of that, because the old adage is, and Max, you've seen it with the Islanders and the Penguins in the playoffs the past couple years. They're not really going to call anything in the playoffs. So I hope that this was at least an early lesson for Chase, and just go up and get the ball. That's the one key that I want to see for the playoffs, is that, when you think of big-time performances by Steelers wide receivers in the playoffs, you could go all the way down the line to the 70s with Stallworth and Swan. even into the 2000s with Hines Ward and Santonio Holmes in the Super Bowl. It's these receivers making big-time plays. And with a lot of these young guys, this is how AB became AB with that catch 10 years ago against, I think it was the Jets or something like that, with a little helmet catch.
Oh, that was Baltimore. And then he made a big play the next week, too, against the Jets, the first down to clinch the game.
This is where I expect to see Steelers wide receivers step up.
And incredible season for him, though. I mean, he had the record for most receptions for a rookie was 62, and he tied the rookie record for most touchdowns in the season with Franco Harris and Lewis Lips. So, and I really didn't know what to expect coming this year because the rookies didn't have OTAs or preseason games. So I didn't really know what to expect with the like how they would produce. But man, Claypool's been beyond what I thought he would be, really, just because not having those off-season reps.
Yeah, you have to wonder if this kind of like changes the way the NFL looks at off-season, the off-season kind of training programs. Obviously there were a lot of injuries, and that was kind of the downside. Maybe not having as many reps kind of in the preseason and all that stuff. And you could attribute the preseason to also having injuries, but a lot of times, guys could potentially be out of shape and whatnot. It's like what we saw in San Francisco. A lot of those players there, like Nick Bosa, they had all these injuries. So you just have to wonder if there's also benefits to that. And potentially, are we seeing that with certain rookies like Claypool, Justin Jefferson? Just letting them just get right into the league and just immediately playing meaningful games and preserving their bodies like in that fashion, if that helped them out a little bit.
There's a ton of questions that'll be asked from this season, and you have to remember that a lot of people have gotten their chances out from the preseason. And with the NFL, you just want to see them strike a little bit of a balance. There's guys like Terrell Davis had a Hall of Fame career because in Japan, he absolutely obliterated someone on a kickoff. You need those moments to kind of make a little bit of a name of yourself and get the coach's attention. But of course, there is also levels to this. These veterans do need their rest, and sometimes it is overkill, but again, these moments can make or break careers. So now it's time to switch focus onto the defense, and they sacked Baker Mayfield 4 times without TJ Watt or Cam Hayward playing a down. And it was probably the most unlikely continuation of that sack streak. Alex Highsmith, he had an incredible game with 9 total tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss, a quarterback hit as well. And also registering sacks were Stephon Tuitt, Jaron Elliott, and Chris Wormley. Those 4, as we mentioned, have all recorded a quarterback hit each. How confident are you in the Steelers' pass rush getting to Mayfield in the wild card game?
I'm extremely confident. If there's one thing that I know the Steelers are going to do against the Browns, it's get after the quarterback. So as far as that goes, yeah, very confident. It was great to see Highsmith play so well. Obviously, through the first half of the season, the one thing that made the Steelers feel like an all-time great defense potentially was having TJ Watt and Bud Dupree on the other side. So to see Highsmith, if he can even just be in the playoffs 80% of what Bud Dupree was, it's still a real elite defense. They still have one of the best units in the entire league. So I know that they're going to get after the quarterback. I'm not worried about that. And I'm excited to see TJ go off on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree. I think out of Highsmith, we're seeing growth every single week we've seen him play. And I'm excited to see him perform in the playoffs. It's pretty unfortunate about Bud, but it's also nice to see a guy who typically wouldn't get an opportunity immediately, like a guy like Charlotte, get an opportunity to play in the NFL. I think it's kind of a cool thing, and we'll see how he does. But as for having TJ Watt, I'm extremely excited to have basically the defensive player of the year. It's kind of, I think, over right now that, he's potentially going to be the defensive player of the year. So I'm excited to have him back on the field, healthy too.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident with the Steelers getting sacks against the Browns. Highsmith has really stepped up and filled in there with Bud Dupree missing. He's been really working that spin move lately. It's been working for him too, and like Guthrie mentioned, the guy from Charlotte, just amazing to see what he's doing against Jedrick Wills, who's a first-round pick from Alabama. And, to do that against him. And I saw his dad mentioned on Twitter how, like, he was a walk-on, too, at Charlotte, and he was a zero-star recruit. And Jedrick Wills is a 5-star recruit. So just amazing to see how he's progressed here his rookie season. And TJ Watt, having that rest, he should be ready to go and should create havoc on Sunday night.
I don't think they're going to walk away from Dupree, but it makes you feel really good at the fact that they could get a guy coming right out of the pipeline. What's your thoughts on the future of the linebacker position for the Steelers? Because even Jaron Elliott, that's the other outside linebacker, so it's proof that the Steelers have depth coming out of this position.
I'm excited to want to continue to see growth from all these guys. And we've seen a lot of growth from TJ. When we drafted him, I think he changed positions in college, so it's just cool that he's not just a Watt, he's TJ Watt, and he's making a name for himself and potentially being the defensive player of the year while his brother, was, it has to be hard having like a sibling like that who's, has all the accolades, he's already established himself as, $100 million man in the NFL. So it's just nice to see him making a name for himself, and it's all kind of paying off. As for the other linebackers, I'm just excited to see, how they all do when it comes to, like a playoff situation. Looking ahead, I wouldn't be completely worried if you lost Dupree. I would like to bring him back, but if we didn't, I would still feel okay.
Robert Spillane might come back this week. That I haven't really heard anything, but he's due to come back off injured reserve. That would be huge because I read, people were saying that Vince Williams can't really do like what he's used to because he has to fill in for that. Because they're dealing with Avery Williamson and Marcus Allen, so like they haven't been playing there all year. And Williamson's kind of struggled in coverage. Have you seen that, Max?
Yeah, he's not as great in space as Spillane, I thought.
Yeah, Spillane's kind of been better, per se this year in those areas. I know he let up that touchdown on the goal line. He missed the tight end coming across, but I like what Highsmith is doing. TJ Watt's obviously a monster, and then I like Vince Williams. I've always been a fan of Vince Williams. He's great against the run, really good run blitzer. Devin Bush is a big loss to. They're really not having him's obviously something that they could use right now. Same with Bud Dupree.
Going back to Bud too, I think it also gets complicated with the injury. We all know that like he was going to break the bank before the injury this offseason, so it might have been hard for the Steelers to bring him back. I'm not exactly a cap expert, so I don't know exactly how the machinations are going to work or how much that contract is going to change now that he does have that injury. But it is nice to know, like Guthrie said, with the depth, if they have to go to Highsmith next year, it seems like it's going to be a thing that it's not necessarily a question mark. You kind of feel good about it going into next season.
We'll quickly go through, I guess you could say, the negatives for the Steelers defense, and that was a pass defense. It did okay, I guess. I mean, they gave up the one chunk play to Rashard Higgins, but the one thing that they missed that they got from the Colts game last week was, I guess, a turnover that could really change the game. It wasn't really needed, considered how close it was. I mean, the Steelers could have tied it up on that 2-point conversion, and then, of course, it goes into overtime where the Browns have to march down the field. And also, the run defense was gashed again this week. Nick Chubb ran for 108 yards on 14 carries, and overall, the defense, normally stout against the run again, pretty much giving up a big total, 192 yards on the ground. Again, there's a lot to think about this. Key players for the Steelers were out. But is this a concern in your opinion? It's a little bit more apparent with Bud Dupree being out of the lineup, but still, something doesn't feel right about this. Teams occasionally run on you, but it's been a little bit more consistent with it from teams in a way.
Especially with, Nick Chubb with that long touchdown, everybody's kind of roasting Minka there. Like, all right, get him out of there, I don't know. It'll just be nice to see with our full roster back, like Cam back and TJ on there. We'll have to see kind of how it all ends out, and it'll be playoff football. It'll be interesting for sure.
I thought that a lot of like you just said, the Minka play, like some of the run stuff I thought this past week was a lot of, I don't want to say not high effort, but like the tackling level is clearly wasn't there to where it's been in weeks past. So I'm not worried about that necessarily come playoff time. And with the pass defense, I feel like we kind of just know what it is at this point, right? Like it's not a great secondary. It's a good secondary. But at the same time, we know the Butler is going to blitz a lot and he's going to put those D-backs out on islands. So from time to time, they're going to give up chunk plays. But they also have guys who are playmakers like Mike Hilton. And as long as they get that pass rush to force things on the other end, then they'll be all right. The run defense, want to see a little more effort, a little better tackling next week. Obviously, we know that the Browns are really good at running the ball, and that's probably just something that they're going to do. So maybe that's why I'm not concerned, because I just know that they're gonna come out and run the ball probably pretty well. But yeah, as far as the defense goes, I still feel as good about it pretty much as I have the last month or so.
Yeah, the Browns are one of the best rushing teams in the league. They have a really good offensive line that's built for that. Wyatt Teller's one of the best run blocking guards in the league, and Chubb's a really good player too. And they got Hunt also. Chubb went over 1,000 yards, and Hunt also almost went over 1,000 yards. But yeah, I think like Max said, the defense, their secondary, they're always going to give up like a big play here and there, which is kind of, you wish they would limit that. But I think getting Hayward back and TJ Watt will help in the run game. But it should be interesting. That's really what the Browns rely on. Their offense is getting that run game going and then having Baker on play action and bootlegs.
All right, guys, so it's official now. The playoff picture has been set, and now that we clearly know like the routes in terms of what the Steelers could be taking to get to the Super Bowl, I don't know about you, but if certain things play out, I feel pretty confident about the Steelers making a deep playoff run right there. I mean, Buffalo, Indianapolis is number 2 and number 7. If Indianapolis wins, suddenly, instead of having to go on the road to Kansas City, I believe, it's now the Steelers get at least home field advantage through the divisional, and who knows what could happen in Kansas City. And, of course, Tennessee and Baltimore, a rematch of last year's epic playoff divisional game. It's a lot of things that could really play the Steelers' way. And I think the most optimal road past Cleveland is, I want to say, Baltimore and maybe Indianapolis again. But eventually everyone's going to have to. But if they end up facing the Chiefs in Kansas City, I mean, that was kind of the predicted AFC Championship matchup, really, for most people. So regardless, I mean, at least out of the divisional, that seems pretty good. And I want to get your thoughts on the potential roads that the Steelers could take through the playoffs.
There's a lot of roads, definitely. Like the Ravens, they look like a completely different team, honestly, to me than last year. Like they could potentially outrun the Titans this year. Their whole identity right now it feels like they've always been a run team, but this like the growth we've seen, like how much, I don't know how much they ran against the Bengals, but it was definitely over 200 yards for sure as a team. I don't know. I could potentially see them knocking out Tennessee and that could be interesting.
Yeah, they do feel different from after that Monday night game against the Browns. I mean, that really felt like it was a Monday night thriller, really. And it really feels like it's one of those games that when you win, suddenly it feels like everything's all right. Max, what's your take on this?
Yeah, any road that would avoid the Chiefs would be my favorite road personally, but I don't think that's going to happen probably. I think it's a pretty good draw. You don't want to see an AFC North opponent in the first round, obviously, if you don't have to, but I'd rather see the Browns than the Ravens. Like Guthrie just mentioned, the Ravens are playing pretty well right now. I wouldn't necessarily want to match up against them. And then if the Steelers are able to advance, obviously you either are going to have Buffalo on the road. We kind of know what that is at this point, that they went there. And I think that if the Steelers play a cleaner game, that's definitely a winnable game. Or if you get lucky and Buffalo gets upset, then you get either Baltimore, who you've already beaten twice at home, or Tennessee, who you've beaten on the road. So the path, at least to the championship game, isn't that daunting, I would say. It's definitely doable, and I feel pretty good about their path.
Yeah, like you guys mentioned, I didn't want to see the Ravens see the Steelers play them in the first round. They're a hot team right now, and obviously the Browns are an easier draw, I think, on paper, at least. I think the Steelers match up better. Bills, I think that's a real tough game. I'd probably rather see the Steelers play the Ravens in the second round because Buffalo is really hot. They had some key starters out in that game against Miami. I know Tua, rookie quarterback and everything, but like they blew them out. With 56 points they put up. They're a dangerous team right now. They're really well coached too. Sean McDermott has done an incredible job there. And Stephon Diggs, man, he's making a case as like the best receiver in the league. His route running is unbelievable. And I think they probably match. They beat the Ravens twice, and I think I'd rather Steelers go up against Lamar than Josh Allen right now. Josh Allen's playing at an incredibly high level.
Yeah, I think he's very similar, kind of like the same amount of fear right now I have with Patrick Mahomes, just the way he's playing. Josh Allen's definitely, I would say, the MVP of this season, him or Aaron Rodgers. So definitely it'd be very nerve-wracking to play him again. But like Max said, I think, if we did play a cleaner game, that should be a game that we match up quite well. And if our defense can somehow create turnovers, I think we'd have a decent shot against that team, in Buffalo even.
Yeah, Guthrie took the words right out of my mouth right there, too, with Allen for MVP. I'm surprised that he isn't getting more buzzed for MVP at this point. That's what I was going to say. I feel like everyone's just kind of decided now that it's Aaron Rodgers. And while Rodgers is obviously really deserving, I feel like Allen is not getting nearly enough buzz for the way that he's playing this season. I completely agree. He's pretty much like what Mahomes was the past couple of years. It's the level that he's playing at right now. And another thing about the Bills, I don't know if you guys saw this today, but apparently they just got Kenny Stills on their practice squad. Oh, yeah. I didn't even know that you were allowed to do that. But if there's any way that he's going to be suiting up in the playoffs, that would be another big time playmaker for them, which would be really scary.
I know he requested his release from Houston, and it was with the intention to go to a contender. So, yeah, it's kind of like the same rule. I think they kind of loosen the practice squad restrictions with a COVID year. I think any other year this probably doesn't go down, or would have went down much earlier than this.
Yeah, that's a good pickup.
Yeah, I think it's crazy.
Just getting like a playmaker like Kenny Stills, even though you got John Brown, Diggs, I think that's a huge thing for that team. It's just like they somehow got even better.
What are your thoughts about facing Cleveland for the second week in a row? What are you looking for out of the Steelers at full strength starting the playoffs in Pittsburgh?
I'm just looking for, this team to come out firing at all cylinders, just hopefully not have a slow start. That probably will happen anyway, but just hoping to start fast and, start piling on the Browns, just try not to make this a close game. I know it probably will be, but just keep it clean and just play Steelers football. And I think, we still should come up on top.
Something that I'm looking for this week is which Big Ben we're going to get. It seemed like at the second half of that Colts game, he really turned the corner and just kind of flipped switch, was holding the ball for that extra second, taking a hit, pushing the ball down the field. So I want to know, are we going to get that Ben from the beginning of the game, or maybe is he going to need a nudge to kind of unleash that out of him? I think that's going to tell us a lot about how close this game is because, like Guthrie said, I think that this is a game that on paper, the Steelers are the better team. They were just missing arguably their three best players and came down to a 2-point conversion at the end of the game. So this should be a game at home that they are able to win. And if Ben is able to push the ball down the field, hold the ball a little longer and play like he did in the second half of the Colts game, rather than how we've seen him for a lot of the season where he just solely relies on the dink and dunk and doesn't even try to push the ball down the field. If we get that Ben, that could be a big problem.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, Max, the rust part, how Roethlisberger comes out. I hope it's not a repeat with Jacksonville where they start off really slow and maybe overconfidence. I get that. I don't see that with the team, but I see that definitely with the fans, just because the Ravens barely beat the Steelers JV team. But I think people have to remember the Browns were dealing with a COVID situation. They really only had one practice this week. If they get some guys back for their secondary, that'll be huge for them. And I just hope the Steelers are definitely a better team on paper. In every aspect you look at it, they should be favored for this game. But I think Roethlisberger is just the key. Like his right arm is going to lead them to any deep playoff run, and that's what they're going to have to, especially deep ball down the field. Is we have to see like the last two games, even with Rudolph being in there, they excelled well doing that.
And even going off of that, a slow start against this team is definitely not something that you want to put yourself in, because after the Ravens, I think the Browns in the entire playoffs might be the team that I would trust the most with like a 14-0 lead to just kind of pound the rock and maintain a lead. That would really be a bad situation.
Yeah, they're a great running team, and Baker's actually been really doing well taking care of the ball lately, which, I just don't want the Steelers to get in that matchup where the Browns are running the ball successfully, and then you get Baker on those play action passes, and then the linebackers fight up or anything like that. Minka too, like I've been seeing like people. I don't know what went on that long Chubb run, and like I don't know how he didn't make up that tackle, but a lot of people have been criticizing Minka's tackling abilities this year, which has some validity to it. But I just hope they come and play a complete game. Like Guthrie mentioned, it's probably be close. The Steelers usually do keep it close games, but I'm just looking forward to the game on Sunday.
Absolutely. And before we go, we're going to have a little bit of fun here because I like to occasionally add in trivia. As we mentioned at the top of the show, it's kind of deja vu here for the Steelers and the Browns meeting in the playoffs, the wild card rounds. Of course, this happened last in 2002, and before that, 1995 is the last time the Browns were in the playoffs before that, and their opponent was the Steelers. And the Steelers won both times, but the Steelers-Browns game in 2002 was the debut of Renegade and also was the first instance of double Renegade. There may be times in between it that Renegade was played double, and if so, please tell us if you were in Heinz Field or if you remember hearing it on TV broadcasts, whatever. There were two other instances in, we'll say, the past 11 years in which there was a double Renegade. Do any of you guys remember those instances?
Last 11, I want to say had it been a playoff game, so like last 11, the Ravens playoff game?
At least from what I found, no.
Okay.
Last 11. Because I was going to say...
two regular season games.
Really?
I want to go 2011 against the Patriots. For a reason, I think the Steelers probably would have done something.
All right, so have two instances. So you say 2011 with the Patriots, and what else?
I'm trying to think. Another big game. You said regular season too.
I'll go with the Christmas game against the Ravens.
That's a good one.
My guess, and I'll contribute.
I got the game from a couple years ago, the Joe Hayden Patriots pick game.
That's a good one too.
That's a good one. For a reason, I think they did against the Patriots.
Well, you do have one correct. There was one notable one because it was actually mentioned on the scoreboard, and if you search double Renegade Steelers, it was that Steelers-Ravens game, the Immaculate Extension game. The other one was one that was just outright shocking whenever I found out about it. It was a November 2013 game against the Detroit Lions.
Oh, yeah, that's super random there.
I guess that.
I'll never.
I seen it. It came from an old headline from Between the Steel Curtain, your old employer, and I was just like, man, I understand that was the heyday of the Detroit Lions, at least in 2010s, because Megatron was still there. They had some guys there, but yeah, when I seen that, I was just like, what? Detroit? What was the cause of a double Renegade for that game? So if you know why they decided to play double Renegade against, of all teams, the Lions, please let us know in the comments section. And that's all for us here for the Renegade Blitz. For Chris Ward, Guthrie Rasmussen, and Max Rosenfeld, I'm Ty Polk. Thank you for tuning in to the Renegade Blitz.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Blitz podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Renegade Blitz, read articles on renegadeblitz.com, and like us on Facebook. Our podcast is available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, iHeart, and Spotify.